it was a couple days before my 26th birthday, and I was diagnosed with a lifelong condition. So that was pretty heartbreaking, to say the least. But yeah, it definitely changed my whole world.
All right, Jenny, thank you so much for joining me to discuss your experience with IBD. Wow, you have just had a huge 180 these last 4 months. Thanks for being here.
Of course, thanks for having me. Yeah, I'm so happy to finally be feeling better.
Yes. So first off, can you tell everybody what were you diagnosed with? How long ago, and what was that like?
Yeah, so I was diagnosed back in July of 2023 with mild ulcerative colitis.
Hmm.
It was, just lower left-sided colitis.
Hmm.
And it was a couple days before my 26th birthday, and I was diagnosed with a lifelong condition. So that was pretty heartbreaking, to say the least. But yeah, it definitely changed my whole world.
Man, I mean, so you're about to turn 26, you're working hard, you're living in New York, you got a great job, you're going after life, and boom, you're diagnosed with ulcerative colitis. Were you getting a ton of the symptoms for a year prior or 2 years prior? How long were you dealing with these experiences before the diagnosis?
Oh my gosh. For the really, really bad UC symptoms back in probably like 2 months prior. But in college, I was having a couple stomach issues here and there. I was diagnosed with IBS in college. Like there was a point where I had to tell one of my professors, like, hey, like I was taking like my economics final, and I was like, I'm sick, like I might
Yeah.
have to go to the bathroom. Like
Yeah.
it's bad. So I'm sure it was, I've been having issues for years prior to that. So,
Man, and that's one of the scary things about this is a lot of the doctors are saying, "Hey, it's only IBS."
hmm
Right? It's not IBD, it's IBS. It's almost like pre-diabetic, right? But the IBS, this is a good example. IBS can turn into IBD.
hmm
And so that's the illusion of a diagnosis. It's never set in stone.
yeah, 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 it's definitely been a long journey, and to realize, that was just kind of my normal. I was like, okay, this is it, and then when I started getting the really, when I was having, almost 10 to 15 bowel movements a day, like bloody stool, like,
Yeah.
that's when I realized, okay, this isn't normal. Living with the IBS, that was, I guess, not normal either, but I was, dealing with it. But then it got to a point where I was like, okay, this is something different.
Man, and that reminds me of how it was for me too at the end of college. So, you spent your early 20s kind of fiddling around with this. It's kind of bad, it's terrible, a little bit better. Were you already trying diets and trying, IBS protocols, IBD protocols? What was your experience prior to looking at the Shield program?
So when I was first diagnosed, I actually looked at my notebook the other day because I have a notebook of all my doctor's visits, and I wrote
Mhm.
down all of my questions to give him after he diagnosed me. And my first question was, one, what supplements do I take to help with this? And two, like, what diet changes do I have to take? And in my notebook, the answers were, there's no supplements you can take to heal yourself, and there's no diet that will help. He's like, maybe cutting out dairy, but that was the most direction I got.
Man, it was very similar to me, and I know a lot of people out there are resonating with that and had that same experience. So you're going through, and when you started looking at the Shield program, you're dealing with all these symptoms, and by the time you're 25, you're newly diagnosed. The doctor immediately puts you on Mesalamine and then recommends Stelara. Can you tell us about your experience with the medications, how that went for you?
Yeah, so when I was first diagnosed in 2023, I was on mesalamine, and that, kept me stable. Like, I was feeling better, but I was also, they gave you prednisone when you're first diagnosed. Like, I was, that was definitely helping with that.
Yeah.
And then a couple months in after that first year, I'm back to having, 10 bowel movements a day, bloody, it was just back to, it felt like square one again. And I was like, I'm taking mesalamine. How did that happen?
Hmm.
Um, and then with that, I started Stelara, and I did do some diet changes when I was taking Stelara and I wasn't seeing a difference. I was like, okay, now what do I have to do different? Because this, the Stelara was actually kind of making me feel worse immediately after I took the injection. Like the doctor said, oh, this is it. He's like, this will make you feel 100 times better.
This is the answer. Like Stelara is going to work for you. Like this biologic will turn all this off. Just you wait.
Yep.
And sometimes it works really well for a lot of people around the world, but you specifically, you just felt worse every injection you got. Even the last one you got, 5-6 months ago, whatever it was, that even made you feel worse?
Yeah, it was crazy because I was, at the time I took the last injection, I was about a month into the CCL program. Yep. And I was feeling better after a month in CCL, and I went to the doctors and I was telling him, I was like, I'm doing this program, like I feel so good, like I don't want to take the next shot. And I was like, I'm seeing a difference. He's like, no, you're going to be on biologics for the rest of your life. You have to take this. He's like, it's not good if you get off of it. So I took it, and, I was back to having, 5-6 bowel movements a day, having blood in my stool. And I was like, okay, I didn't have that the day before, wow. And then it made it worse immediately.
Wow.
So,
and that's not true for everybody. That's just your experience that you were better. And the moment you got the biologic, your symptoms came back. I mean, that's insane. And so you were on Mesalamine, Stelara made you work, and you got rid of those medications. But coming into the program, I mean, you did some changes. You had some kind of results where you got yourself down to 4, 5, 6, 7 bowel movements a day. Is that correct?
Yeah. So I started, I cut out dairy, like my doctor was like, that's your diet change. I was like, we'll start there. And I saw a little bit of a difference from that, cut out gluten. And then I went overseas, and that was actually really easy to do, to cut out dairy and gluten, because that wasn't part of their diet. So I ate very clean there. And I came home, and I was sick again. It was so crazy. I was like, okay. So I came home, and I was still not doing gluten, not doing dairy. And I was sick, and I was like, what do I do now? And then I was like, well, we're going to try the carnivore diet, see what that does. And when I did that, like, I didn't have any bowel movements. Like, nothing was happening.
Great constipation.
There was constipation. I had no energy. Like, I looked gray. Like, it was just not the right idea. So,
extreme diets are really helpful, but you got to do them strategically. You have to do things around it. Just going and saying, I'm only going to eat this, it might work, but it's a gamble. And if it doesn't work, you might end up in a worse place, underweight and malnourished.
Yeah.
So you got to be careful. Yeah.
I tried that. It was not a smart idea. And then I finally, went back to trying to eat, just gluten-free, dairy-free, clean, and I was still sick. And I was like, taking the Stelara, I was still sick. And I was like, there has to be more to life than this. Like, I was like, this can't be the rest of my life, trying to see what diet will make me, like, how do I make myself feel better? Because the medication's not working. The diets, aren't working.
Yeah.
Like, what's next?
And I'm alone with this. I mean, that's how it was for me. I got some success with paleo, carnivore, but not the first few times trying it. But it didn't get me where you were talking about. And I tried the fruitarian, intermittent fasting, and I do like bone broth fasting. Totally understand all that. I mean, you're coming after trying all of that. Medications, prednisone, mesalamine, carnivore diet, getting rid of gluten and dairy, and you're having 4, 5, 6, sometimes 7 bowel movements a day. You're having a pretty large amount of mucus, lots of urgency. Like, you got to go, you have 2 seconds. Diarrhea, undigested food. And that's really hard living in Manhattan with urgency. Like, forget about it. You forget about it. I lived in Manhattan for 3 years, totally get it, Jenny. And then you had a lot of bloating, cramping, pain, tons of nausea. Is that correct?
Yeah.
So those are all these symptoms you're dealing with at 26 years old with a brand new job in New York. You're flying you to China, flying you around, and you're like, the world is my oyster, except this disease is just, it's like God doesn't give with 2 hands, right? You feel smited by the world, right? You're not able to live. That's how I was in my 20s too. But ironically, you might have had some swelling or extra water weight. You said, hey, I could lose a few pounds, which is different than a lot of us with IBD, right?
Yeah, I definitely, I was not overweight by any means,
Yeah.
but I was just,
3-4 pound type stuff.
like
Yeah.
I work out, I'm a runner, like I do Orange Theory, but I just wasn't like my body just wasn't, the right look that I wanted. So
Yeah. I get that. And so when you're looking at the S.H.I.E.L.D program, what made you feel like this is not a scam? This is actually real. This can be different. This could really help me. What was that process for you? Because I know you were looking at us for a while, kind of like, I don't know.
yeah. So it started one day. I had to call out of work because I was sick, and it was to the point where I was like, I was getting scared. I was like, I don't want to lose my job over this disease, like having to call out of work every other, every week or so. So
Serious
I started,
issue.
My first search was on Instagram. In the search section, I was just like IBD, or like, I don't even know if I looked up ulcerative colitis or something. And I was like, let me find like, a person that has this, like, who can I relate to? Who can I learn from? Like, I just need to learn something. And that's when I stumbled across you, and I clicked on, I went down a rabbit hole of listening to all of your podcasts. Like, you were featured on a couple of different ones.
Is this guy for real? Does he really understand what I'm going through? Yeah.
I was like, okay, like looks like he's been here. So been here before. So started with that, and just I did my, intro call with Julia. I ended up signing up after scrolling through Instagram and podcasts for a few days. I was like, okay, I'm going to do the intro call. And then, it felt so comfortable. And, before I put my credit card information in, I definitely had a twinge of a doubt. I was like, okay, I'm going to be out of my savings at the moment. Like, is this really smart to do?
Yeah. We want to be smart with our money and investments and do the right thing. And that's why we give a private coach, and that's why we do what we do. And Julia's amazing. She was diagnosed with severe ulcerative colitis herself, clinical remission. I'm sure you related with her.
Yeah, she made me feel so comfortable. So
I love that. Julia, we love Julia. She's in Canada, our main sports specialist up there. And let me ask you, what are your symptoms now?
No, honestly, nothing. Really?
So you contemplated throughout most of 2023, finally signed up at the end of August of 2024, right? Or you contemplated most of 2024, got in 2020, and then you got symptom-free, I'm seeing here, by like right around October.
Mm-hmm.
About, like, you still had some nausea, you still had a little undigested food in the stool, but diarrhea was predominantly gone. You were symptom-free then in October.
Mm-hmm.
End of October, and then you got a colonoscopy with your doctor, who swore the Stelara was going to work.
Mm-hmm.
Well, how did that go?
Yeah, so he did the colonoscopy and came into, I was waking up from anesthesia. He starts talking to me, and he's like, that's not what I was expecting. He was like, I was expecting a war zone with the symptoms you were telling me about a couple weeks ago. And he's like, there's, nothing there. It looks better than,
Inactive ulcerative colitis.
Yeah, and he said it was, if you look at my biopsy results and everything was inactive.
Woo, woo, woo. Inactive ulcerative colitis, no medications. Feeling great, back to life. And guys, this isn't a perfect cure answer. This is hard work. It's customization. It's tweaks. It's things work, then they don't work, and learning your body, figuring those root issues. Jenny hit a home run here, which she's explaining, and she did it rather quickly, which we cannot guarantee for everyone else. But we're so excited when it does happen because we want to share what's possible, not what's guaranteed. And I love to see that because this is all I need. And Jenny, two questions. What was it like to work with Coach Z? I mean, Coach Z is in Texas, studies a doctor of chiropractic, had ulcerative colitis himself, got massive results himself. How important was it to have a coach there who you could DM, who you could see one-on-one, who could customize your solutions? Do you think you could have got the results without a coach like that?
No way. Coach Z was beyond helpful, and like, he really listened, and it was always like a friendly face to talk to, after a day of work, and to, I was looking forward to tell him, I'm like, I'm feeling better, like, and he relayed that excitement back, and that kind of kept you going, to see like someone supporting you. So
yeah. And it's so, for me, to talk to someone who's had the disease themselves and gotten rid of those same symptoms, it's just so like, yes, I get it. That worked for me and that didn't. And It's just so amazing. If there's one thing in the program you want to highlight to someone listening to your case, like someone who really resonates, just got this, completely overwhelmed, lost, is there a strategy or a supplement or something from the program you would like to highlight to anyone out there resonating with your story?
Yeah, I feel like I saw, the biggest monumental change through using the nature probiotics. Like immediately, like, there was a little bit of gas, but I knew that, like, you're changing all of that. But like after the first, couple weeks of taking them, it was crazy to see a normal stool. I was like, wow, it's solid. What is that like?
Yes, I love Natron. Natron is so great, and we're taking the powdered form. If you guys want to see the link to what probiotic Jenny used, it's below here in the show notes. But the dairy-free powdered form, we start with one strain at a time, we add in multiple strains, and then we increase those dosages. A lot of times with infectious colitis, or maybe a very light version of ulcerative colitis, which Jenny had just gotten diagnosed a year prior, we can see those probiotics itself do wonders. But that was just part of a whole program, right? With our whole plan, that was one thing that you felt, wow, I take these, I'm feeling better.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. And then, the other thing too is, taking time for myself and like not, learning how to lower my stress and,
and lower that coffee, right?
Yeah, coffee. Yeah.
I got to call you out on the coffee. You got to calm that coffee down, right? And we put you on magnesium because coffee actually makes us deficient in magnesium. And IBD, we already have vitamin deficiency. So that can cause insomnia, heart palpitations, headaches, anxiety, which is going to keep you in a sympathetic state, which is going to keep your urgency up and your bowel movements up, right? We got to stimulate that vagal nerve through the parasympathetic. Great stuff. I love this. Are there any last words you'd like to say to anyone out there who's resonating, who's young, who's uncertain, just feels embarrassed, feels lost, feels like their life is being hindered by this? Being on this other side, I know you watched 100 of these yourself. What would you say on the other side of this?
All the hard work pays off, all the sacrifices you have to make, all of the plans you have to say no to, all of the, why are you doing that? Those questions, it's all worth it in the end to feel more normal and like yourself. So just keep going.